She laughed at his worn hands across the candlelit table, never imagining those same hands would pull her from death's grip before midnight. Rachel Chen had it all figured out. At 34, she commanded a glass corner office on the 42nd floor of Manhattan's most prestigious investment firm, drove a Tesla that cost more than most people's annual salary, and wore confidence like her tailored Armani suits, perfectly fitted and impossible to ignore. Her dating profile reflected her success. Executive seeking someone on my level. No time wasters. When her assistant set up the blind date with Marcus Thompson, Rachel almost canceled. His profile was vague, something about community work and part-time employment. But her mother's voice echoed in her head about giving people chances. So she agreed to one dinner, just one. Marcus arrived at the upscale bistro 5 minutes early, wearing a clean but obviously old blazer and khakis that had seen better days. His hands, Rachel noticed immediately, were calloused and rough, working hands. He smiled warmly as he stood to greet her, but she was already calculating her exit strategy. "So, Marcus," Rachel said after they ordered, swirling her $20 glass of wine, "what exactly do you do?" "I'm a janitor at Lincoln Elementary," he said without hesitation or shame. "Night shift mostly, and I do some weekend work at the community center." Rachel's eyebrows rose. "A janitor?" She didn't bother hiding her surprise. "That's interesting." "It's honest work," Marcus replied evenly. "Plus, it lets me be there when my daughter Emma gets home from school. She's 8. Lost her mom 3 years ago to cancer, so it's just us now." "Right." Rachel checked her phone conspicuously. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you, Marcus. I don't think we're really compatible. I mean, I'm managing a $200 million portfolio and you're cleaning floors." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I see. Well, I appreciate your honesty. Don't take it personally," Rachel continued, her tone condescending. "It's just that I've worked incredibly hard to get where I am. I need someone who understands that world, you know? Someone with ambition." "Ambition," Marcus repeated quietly, something flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, I guess raising a daughter alone while making sure kids have a clean, safe place to learn isn't very ambitious." Rachel had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable, but she pressed on. "You know what I mean. Financial stability, career trajectory, future planning." "Right," Marcus signaled for the check. "Well, I should get going anyway. Emma's at a sleepover tonight, but I like to check in." They split the bill, Rachel insisted, and walked out into the cool October evening. The restaurant sat on a quiet street near the Hudson River, far from the bustling main avenues. Rachel's car was parked 2 blocks away in a dimly lit lot. "I'll walk you to your car," Marcus offered. "That's really not necessary." "I know, but my mama raised me right, even if I'm just a janitor." The words stung because they were meant to, but Rachel simply shrugged and started walking, heels clicking on the pavement. Marcus followed a few steps behind, hands in his pockets. They were halfway across the parking lot when Rachel heard the footsteps, running, multiple people. Before she could turn, 3 figures emerged from between parked cars. One grabbed her purse. Another shoved her hard against a car door. "Phone and jewelry now!" The man's voice was rough, desperate. Rachel's heart hammered. Her fingers fumbled with her necklace, but fear made her clumsy. One of the men grabbed her wrist, twisting hard. Then Marcus moved. Years of Marine training, something he hadn't mentioned during dinner, kicked in instantly. He stepped forward, positioned himself between Rachel and her attackers, and his voice dropped to a command she'd never heard before. "Back away, now!" The largest attacker pulled a knife. "Man, get out of here. This ain't your business." What happened next took seconds but felt like slow motion. The man with the knife lunged at Rachel. Marcus deflected the blade with his forearm. Rachel heard the fabric tear, saw the blood, and in 3 precise movements, disarmed the attacker and put him on the ground. The other 2 ran. The knife clattered across the pavement. Marcus kicked it away, then immediately turned to Rachel. "Are you hurt?" His hands, those calloused. Working hands she'd judged, gently checked her arms, her face. "Did they hurt you?" Rachel couldn't speak. She stared at the growing red stain on Marcus's sleeve. "You're bleeding," she finally whispered. "It's not deep." "Are you okay?" She nodded, but tears were suddenly streaming down her face. Not tears of pain, tears of shame, gratitude, and realization. This man she'd dismissed, mocked, and looked down upon had just put himself between her and a knife without hesitation. Marcus called 911, while keeping himself positioned protectively between Rachel and the direction the attackers had fled. His voice was steady as he gave their location. Rachel noticed he didn't shake, didn't seem rattled. She was trembling enough for both of them. The police arrived within minutes. Paramedics insisted on treating Marcus's wound, a 4-inch gash that required 12 stitches. Through it all, he kept checking on Rachel, making sure she was warm enough, had water, was really okay. "You were military," one of the older police officers said to Marcus, recognition in his eyes. "Marines! 2 tours in Afghanistan." Marcus winced as the paramedic cleaned his wound. "Long time ago." Rachel felt like she was seeing him for the first time. Not a janitor in an old blazer, but a man who'd served his country, who'd learned to fight not for violence, but for protection. A man who worked nights so he could make his daughter breakfast. A man who'd instinctively sacrificed his own safety for a woman who'd spent an hour insulting his life. At the hospital, Rachel refused to leave until Marcus had been treated. She sat in the harsh fluorescent waiting room, still in her designer dress, mascara streaked, and felt smaller than she had in years. When Marcus finally emerged, his arm bandaged and in a sling, she stood. "Marcus, her voice broke. "Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. You saved my life. After everything I said, you still—" "That's just who I am," he said simply. "It's not about what you said or didn't say. But I was horrible to you, cruel. I judged you for having honest work and being a good father. And you—" She gestured helplessly at his bandaged arm. "You took a knife for me." Marcus sighed, and for the first time that night, he looked tired. "Rachel, you want to know something? I did have the career you think matters. I was in security consulting after the military, making 6 figures. Had the fancy apartment, the impressive title. Then my wife got sick, and I realized Emma needed a father who was present, not prestigious. So I chose her. I chose being there for homework and bedtime stories over client dinners and business trips." He paused, letting that sink in. "My low-paying job lets me volunteer at the community center teaching self-defense to single women and kids, lets me coach Emma's soccer team, lets me have a life that's about more than a paycheck. I thought I'd lost ambition. I redirected it toward things that actually matter." Rachel sat down heavily on a plastic chair. Every word hit like a revelation. She thought about her own life, the late nights at the office, the relationships she'd neglected, the last time she'd done something for someone else without calculating the return on investment. "I've been measuring worth all wrong," she whispered. Marcus sat beside her, his good hand resting near hers. "We all get lost sometimes. The question is what we do when we find our way back." They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital humming around them. "Emma," Rachel said suddenly, "your daughter. Tell me about her." And Marcus did. His face transformed as he talked about his 8-year-old, how she wanted to be a veterinarian, how she'd learned to make scrambled eggs to surprise him on Father's Day, how she still slept with her mother's favorite scarf. Rachel listened, really listened, and saw the wealth in his life that had nothing to do with money. As dawn broke, Marcus called Emma's friend's mom to check in. Rachel heard the love in his voice, the way he asked about Emma's sleepover and reminded her he'd pick her up at 9. When he hung up, Rachel took a breath. "Would you let me buy you breakfast? A real one, where I shut up and listen?" Marcus smiled, and it reached his eyes. "I'd like that." They ended up at an all-night diner, where Rachel learned about Emma's drawings that covered Marcus's refrigerator, about the students at Lincoln Elementary who drew him, pictures because he remembered all their names, about the teenagers at the community center who called him. Coach entrusted him with their problems. She told him about her own childhood, growing up poor, clawing her way to success, and somewhere along the way, losing sight of why she'd wanted it in the first place. "Success isn't the problem," Marcus said, stealing a fry from her plate. "It's when we use it as a measuring stick for human worth. You've built something impressive, Rachel. You should be proud. But it doesn't make you better than anyone else. And other people's choices to prioritize. Different things don't make them less than." 3 months later, Rachel stood in the gymnasium of Lincoln Elementary, watching Marcus coach a kids' basketball team. She'd started volunteering there, too, using her financial expertise to help the school's budget committee, tutoring kids in math on Tuesday evenings. The glass office hadn't disappeared, but she left it by 6 now. She'd started having dinner with her parents weekly. She'd even adopted a dog from the shelter where Marcus and Emma volunteered on Saturdays. She and Marcus had been dating for 2 months, real dating, where they talked about dreams and fears and Emma's latest school project, where love was measured in time and attention, not price tags. "Ms. Rachel!" Emma ran over, basketball in hand. "Did you see? I made 3 baskets. I saw. You were amazing." Rachel high-fived her, marveling at how this little girl had become one of her favorite people in the world. Marcus walked over, arm-heeled, smile bright. He kissed Rachel's forehead naturally, comfortably. "Ready for dinner?" "Emma wants to try making lasagna." "Sounds perfect," Rachel said, and meant it. As they walked out together, Marcus's hand in hers, Emma chattering about her day, Rachel thought about that night in the parking lot, about how close she'd come to missing this because she couldn't see past job titles and bank accounts. Sometimes salvation comes from the hands we least expect. Sometimes the richest people are the ones who understand that wealth has nothing to do with money. And sometimes it takes a janitor with a warrior's heart to teach a CEO what really matters, not the size of your office, but the size of your love. Not what you earn, but what you give. Not who you impress, but who you show up for when it counts. Marcus had saved her life that night. But in the months that followed, he'd done something even more important. He'd taught her how to live it.